Hi, we're back for my Appalachian Trail Day, and today is going to be fun. So last time we talked about someone giving me their car for some trail magic, so I was able to get food, which will get me to Pinkham Notch, which is where my next resupply is. And then when I leave Pinkham Notch, I am technically right before I'm in the White Mountains, the Presidential Mountains, which it's called the Presidential Mountains because all the peaks in that area are names of presidents of the United States, but it's also referred to as the White Mountains because it's the White Mountain Range. So once I get to Pinkham Notch, I will be hiking the Presidential Mountains. So like the next few days of trail talking days are going to be really exciting. But today we're going to talk about the Mahoosuc Notch, which you have not heard of the Mahoosuc Notch. It is a 1 mile stretch on the Appalachian Trail, and it is arguably and infamously known as the most difficult mile on trail, also the longest mile on trail, because typically when you're hiking around like 3 miles per hour, depending on how fast you're going. This particular mile took me, I think it was like an hour and a half to get through. It also happened to be the very end of our day because as you head south, there is a shelter just like a 1/10 of a mile after you exit the Mahoosuc Notch. So for northbounders is right before. But if you're not familiar with the Mahoosuc Notch, it is so if there are two mountains converging together, this valley right here, there is a huge rock scramble. It's kind of like the mountains like compressed together or came apart, and all of these jumbles of boulders the sizes of like Buicks, small trailers, had crumbled into the valley, and they made tunnels and obstacles that you have to get over in order to transverse this valley that's a mile long. And again, end of the day, I think we had done like a 20-mile day. For reference, this is October 16th of 2017, the day we get to the Mahoosuc Notch. And when we get to the notch, as you're coming down the Mahoosuc Arm, which is like, for northbounders, it's on the back end of the notch. For southbounders, it leads you into the notch. You start to see all the rock scrambles. But as we were making our way down the arm, nightfall started to come in, and this was the first night we were expecting snow. So there were starting to be like small flurries of ice kind of creeping in, and we're in the valleys, which is where it's going to be a little bit colder. That wind's going to really fly through that valley. So we get to the notch, and you'll see in the photos at the end of this, all you see are just enormous boulders. You can see the mountains just kind of like sandwiching you, and then dead ahead are all of these enormous, like the size of this room, boulders in some cases. And the blazing or the markings to guide you through that notch are few and far between. This was the first time I sat down and cried. I was yelling and cussing. I was just so frustrated, which looking back on it, and I think even that night, I was like, why am I like so frustrated? I don't know where I'm going. I know I'm going straight through a valley. It's not like there's offshoots of I don't know which direction to take. I need to just keep moving forward regardless of the way regardless of how I get forward. I need to keep moving up and over under things to go this direction until it clears and I can find my path to the left, which would be southbound, which is what happened. But at the time, it was extremely frustrating because I have Riley, who doesn't know how to get across these rock scrambles. Only I can like kind of guide us through, because there are like some huge boulders that had fallen on top of each other, and you have to tunnel your way beneath them. That's the trail. And obviously she's not confident enough to do that, so I would have to go first, take her pack off, pull the pack through. I'd take my pack off as well and pull that through because it's like the size of like, it's like that big of a hole, so not big at all. And then she of course was scared and would like crawl her way through, and we slowly progressed our way through the notch. There were times I'd have to pick her up and put her over boulders because they were up to my shoulder when I was standing, and I'm 5'7", so very large boulders to scramble your way around. Sorry, my chest. But we did eventually make it through the notch. And again, there's a shelter about 1/10 of a mile south of the end of the notch. So we got there, and again, it's getting really, really cold at this point. Nightfall's happening. So I think this was the first time we set the tent up inside the shelter. So if you're doing a winter hike, I would actually recommend not staying in shelters at all, mainly because of the mice, and because shelters are where a lot of wildlife tend to stay, like bears are usually around the areas. Thankfully for us, since I had a dog, we didn't really run into any bears, or weren't any in camp at night at least. But I know other southbounders did have bear encounters at the shelters, but since I had a dog, that usually does to keep the bears away. Just be wary of that. The only reason we really stayed in shelters is there's almost always a water source. So we would always stay in or around a shelter. And then as it got exponentially colder through our winter hike, we would put the tent up inside the shelter to keep the wind off of us. So this night in particular, since we're in the valley still, the wind was just kind of like funneling through that valley, and there was nowhere to put a tent. There was nowhere to put a tent because you're still inclining up like a rock scramble in a sense when you're leaving the Mahoosuc Notch. So there was no flat area to put a tent down. So we put the tent inside the shelter and like set up like a normal tent. We just didn't stake the poles into the ground. That way we had double the wind reinforcement to keep all like the wind off of us at night, which was good because we woke up to snow. There was light dusting of snow. There was a lot of brine ice on top of the mountain, which you'll see at the photos at the end of this video. Beautiful, beautiful day. Everything was just covered in ice the next morning. It was freezing. It was well below freezing degree, like, temperature-wise. But yeah, like, beautiful sunny day. The sun was glistening off of all the snow and ice. Riley had a field day, just like running through the field, literally running through the fields of snow, eating it. But yeah, the Mahoosuc Notch itself was not my favorite day on the trail. And I can't say it's one I would go back and do again. That night was also the first night we ran out of canister fuel, and that was when I decided to just send my my stove home and my pot. I was just getting tired of hot food, and it was just taking too much time. And as it got colder, it took longer and more fuel to heat up the water in the food. So I just was going to send it home when I got to Pinkham Notch. I didn't want to deal with it anymore. And I didn't have anything to warm up my food anyways because of how quickly it was going. It was burning through. But remember, this is the 16th of October. I figured out that we were probably going to get to Pinkham on the 19th. So somewhere in the next few days, I was able to get a phone call in to schedule a reservation at the lodge there. It's the AMC Highlands Center. You can like be a member and stay there, or you can be a hiker and stay as well. They have like private rooms, they have bunk rooms, I believe, but it's a really nice place to stay. I would definitely recommend it. It's at the base of the Presidential Mountains. You can't miss it. You like walk through their camp essentially. And then the next morning after the 16th, so on the 17th, we finally made it into New Hampshire. So the Mahoosuc Notch is in southern, like the southernmost part of Maine on the trail. And then we ran into our first Sobo. We ran into another Sobo because we had been a couple like a few days in, but not like deep into the hike yet. And his name was Slow-Mo. He will join up again with me later on, so just keep that name in the back of your mind, Slow-Mo. We ran into him going up an ascent. He got his name appropriately because he was very, very slow. We passed him going up an ascent, and we didn't see him again until Mount Washington, so a few days from now. And then on the 19th, we descended the Wildcats. I believe it's 3 mountains consecutively, and at the northern end of them, there's a beautiful pond that they overlook. But from the very top of them, there's like a satellite center, and so it's an open mountaintop because the satellite needs to have open range, and you can clearly see Mount Washington, all the presidentials in front of you. So there's some beautiful photos at the end of this video of the glimpse of what is to come in a few days and what we've been striving to get to for so long. So, also, when we are hiking the Wildcats, that's when I first started to realize that the weekends are going to be busy, because normally I don't really see people. I'll see like maybe 1 or 2 people a day as I'm hiking, and it's always in the opposite direction. But on the weekends, like specifically Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings, there's just like a wave of people on the trail, because you have your like weekend warriors, your day hikers out for trips. So as we were descending the Wildcats, there is obviously a road crossing down there where you can park at a trailhead, and there was just a flock of people coming up them, probably like 30 or 40 people that we ran into, and Riley loved it. She got to have all the pets, and everyone wanted to know what we were doing, which got pretty old by about 10 people in. So we were just kind of like putting our heads down, just like barreling past these people, because I know we need to get to a certain spot by a certain day. But at the base of the Wildcats, you do get to Pinkham Notch. Well, you get to the AMC Highlands Center, which if you go inside, there's a welcome center, and you can check the weather forecast for the Mount Washington summit, which is the second highest peak on the trail, but it's like the worst weather in America. It gets like the worst weather in America. It gets like 100+ mph winds and like below 0 degree temperatures, which we will talk about on the next video, because of how crazy some of the weather was. But you should go inside, check the weather. You can also resupply some stuff there as well. I believe you can also have packs. You can have your resupply sent, because I got mine, and it was absurdly heavy with a lot of winter gear, which we will talk about next time. But like my pack was bigger than me. Like I could barely put it on. I had so much stuff. But once I got there, I had one of the workers there. Thankfully, she was kind enough to give me a ride into town to go to Walmart. I had to make a few calls, grab some resupply stuff that I needed to purchase. And while I was there, I ran into Fallen. If you don't remember, you haven't been listening, I met Fallen on my hike up Katahdin. We summited Katahdin together. And I hadn't seen him since then. He's been like having some people drive in places, just meeting, like he's essentially hitchhiking his way through the Appalachian Trail and just living on the trail for years. He's a true hiker. But he was there, had been staying with a couple friends, and he was planning on summiting Mount Washington, I believe, in a couple days from this point. So ran into Fallen at Walmart, oddly enough, and then let's see, that night at dinner, as I mentioned earlier, at the AMC Highlands Center, it's like family style meals. It's a big open like cafeteria area. They have provided food, but it's all family style. So you sit at a really big, long picnic table with anyone that comes and sits by you, and you just sit and talk. So it was a great way to just kind of like relax once we got there. I got to sit and talk to a lot of day hikers that were out for the weekend, summiting Mount Washington the following day, because I was going to take the very next day off, so it's called a zero. And then the next day, I will be summiting Mount Washington and the presidentials. But we sat and had dinner, huge dinner. You eat as much as you want, and then we all just kind of like went our own ways. And we will pick up with the very next morning on the next video. We're about to run out of time. So we will be taking a 0 day, and then we'll be summiting Mount Washington. But the next couple videos are going to be very exciting, so make sure you watch them. See ya!